Friends and colleagues, welcome back to Colombia Business News Recap for July 2nd, 2023. It's been a quiet week in Lake Wobegon, as they say. Many of you will get that reference, but actually here in Colombia as well, we are finishing up the month of June, which is when formal employers are required to give an extra salaries pay to those workers making less than 10 times minimum wage, which is the vast majority of workers in Colombia. They call that prima. It's known in other countries as aguinaldo. And that's something that's left over from the colonial times of Spain. But during Christmas, in a lot of countries, workers are entitled to an extra paycheck. And in Colombia, also during June, there are three national holidays this month, all falling on a Monday. So the work month is reduced to less than 20 work days. Congress is out on recess, and so not a whole lot goes on generally during the month of June in Colombia. But we will start out with a little bit of bad news. There was a crash. Colombian Air Force planes, the Super Tucanos that are made by Embraer in Brazil, were on a training mission, and there was a mechanical failure of some type and an accident. And Lieutenant Colonel Mario Andrés Espinosa Gonzales lost his life, and there is an investigation underway as to the cause of that accident, that fatal Air Force accident that happened yesterday here in Colombia. So, you guys know, those of you that follow Colombian news in general or listen to us or read Finance Colombia, know that Armando Benedetti, who was the not only President Gustavo Petro's campaign manager, but also appointed the ambassador to Venezuela, resigned. Petro called for his resignation along with his chief of staff, Laura Sanabria. They were involved, or are involved, in a scandal that involves suitcases of money, illegal wiretaps. And so even though Petro called for and received Benedetti's resignation, it appears that Benedetti has returned to his post with the blessings of Gustavo Petro, at least until July, maybe longer, we don't know, but he has returned to his duties. So it turns out that his resignation has been canceled. During the intercepts of the recordings between Benedetti and Lara Sanabria, we have Benedetti threatening to expose illegal campaign contributions in Gustavo Petro's campaign. So it's interesting that Petro first calls for his resignation, then the two meet. It appears that they may have had several meetings since then, and Benedetti has returned to his post. Something something odd, but anyway, we'll just take that at its face value. We don't have any additional information beyond that. There is lots of speculation swirling around what could be going on there, but we don't make the news, we just report it, so we're going to wait and see. Also, in the political front, many of you may remember Oscar Ivan Zuluaga. He lost the 2014 campaign to then President Juan Manuel Santos. Zuluaga ran as the candidate put forward by Alvaro Uribe, former president, and then Senator Alvaro Uribe, and leader of the Centro Democrático Party, which is a kind of a, you could say it's a right-wing party. It certainly is a right-wing party, but there's, politics down here in Colombia, like in a lot of places, are multidimensional. It's basically the Uribista party. It's the party of Alvaro Uribe and those who follow him and those who are his acolytes. And Zuluaga lost something like 51 to 45%, if I remember, against Juan Manuel Santos. It was a hotly contested campaign, and Uribe's and Zuluaga kind of ran on the, remember, Santos was known for, he got the Nobel Prize for negotiating peace with the FARC rebels, and Zuluaga, backed by Uribe, was the anti-peace process campaign. That was basically their their platform, to take a hard line against the leftist rebels and to not negotiate peace with them and to reject any kinds of peace negotiations. So he lost that campaign, and Santos went ahead to finish negotiating the peace process, winning the Nobel Prize. But Ivan Zuluaga has now been charged. The prosecutors have said June 13th, they said that they're going to charge him with receiving $1.6 million in Odebrecht campaign money. You guys remember the big Odebrecht scandal, Lava Jato, in Brazil. Odebrecht, like this big tentacled octopus of corruption, had their tentacles in campaigns throughout Latin America, Dominican Republic, Central America, South America, and even some money found its way into Santos's campaign, which he nobody actually accused him of knowing about it, and he came out while he was president and apologized for it. Um, some people, I think, went to jail for that, but it actually, even though it did even reach into his campaign, he was quick to come out and denounce it himself. But with Zuluaga, what has happened is not only has his campaign apparently received the money with his knowledge, but then he conspired to cover it up. His son, David in Spanish, was his campaign manager, and Zuluaga is now caught on tape trying to cover it up. According to him, it seems like he even has conversations with the priest that somehow got recorded, where he's saying that he wants to do anything necessary to protect his son in this. But in those conversations, not only does he implicate himself, but he actually also makes it clear that his son knew and was involved. So not just receiving the campaign funds, but then also trying to cover it up. There's a saying in politics in the U.S. that the crime is in the cover-up. Not so much that when something happens, but it is in the attempt to cover it up that laws are often broken. So prosecutors have received several hours of recordings from former Zuluaga associate Daniel Garcia Arizabaleta. Yeah, I think that's right. Where Zuluaga directly implicates himself, and like I said, his son David Zuluaga Martinez as well. And this is a new scandal that's just breaking out. It's a new scandal involving an old politician who's kind of out of things. He tried to run in last year's presidential elections, but didn't even make it through the primary. He never really got a lot of support. A lot of people kind of see him as being a has-been. He has been a loyal acolyte to Alvaro Uribe, who came out recently on lamenting things on Twitter. Uribe is a big user of Twitter, and he didn't really have any way to defend Zuluaga, but he kind of was like, well, what about Juan Manuel Santos? And he said, for Zuluaga, he said, okay, name the names. Who were the people with who gave the money, who received the money, and where did the money go? Kind of trying to sound like a defense attorney for Zuluaga. And then he said, well, what about Petro? Or not Petro, but what about Santos? Santos actually, that ran its course, and Santos actually, like I mentioned, came out and one, was not implicated in being involved in the scandal himself personally, and then two, denounced the scandal himself, quite the opposite of what happened now. But the main qualification for being an Uribista, being in the, getting his support, is being loyal to him. One of the reasons, one of the primary reasons you could say that Uribe put Zuluaga forward as a candidate against Santos is because Uribe felt that Santos was not loyal to him. Remember that Santos was the finance minister and the defense minister of Colombia. He was the defense minister of Colombia under Uribe. He was known for being a very effective defense minister. Hardline, they had lots of military wins against the FARC and the ELN. They freed the two American hostages, and then Ingrid Betancourt, who had been held for a long time Uh, so when Uribe originally blessed Santos as a presidential candidate, Uribe thought that Santos would be a puppet and kind of do what he said, much like Ivan Duque's reputation, or what Ivan Duque, the Colombia's last president, was accused of, is basically never getting out from under Uribe's thumb, leading to him having kind of the most unpopular and ineffective presidency in recent history. Santos took another route. Santos, when he became president, he kind of thanked Uribe for his support and then went his own way and put forward his own agenda, much to the fury and rage of Uribe. So then Uribe comes and puts up Zuluaga to try to um, dethrone Santos, which failed. Uribe was successful in initially, um, you could say, winning or having the no vote against the referendum that was run again, to ratify Santos's peace negotiations with the FARC. So after that defeat, Santos kind of outfoxed the Uribistas and then was able to use procedural maneuvers to take it to Congress anyway and get it passed. And so now that peace process is in effect, even though we have FARC dissidents, those that did not agree to on the rebel side, that didn't agree to lay down their arms or to join the peace process or whatever, and they're still out there running around in the jungles and brewing and taxing narcotics and things like that. Um, After Santos, we had Ivan Duque. Ivan Duque, who was, Santos could not run for another term. Uribe puts forward Duque. Duque pretty much worked in conjunction with, or kind of under the direction. At least that's the reputation. Now, I'm not in the Capitol. I'm not in Casa de Niños in the halls to hear what goes on. But basically, the reputation is such that Ivan Duque remained an acolyte of Uribe and the Uribe camp, even though a lot of the Uribistas turned against him and did not, and thought he was an ineffective president and blamed him for the election of a very left-wing Gustavo Petro, who's kind of like the polar opposite of Alvaro Uribe. The two are enemies, you could say. I mean, not like mortal enemies, but they're political enemies. I think it is very fair to say. So anyway, that's a little bit of the background. Zuluaga is in big trouble. His son is in big trouble. They've got hours of recording. It's hard to recordings. It's hard to see how he gets out of this. But this is just brewing up. So now we have some interesting twists in the Benedetti scandal. We have some this new news that has come out, very serious for the people involved. Not a whole lot, we really cover business. We don't, we're not political specialists. We don't want to become like primarily a political publication. We really focus on news that's relevant to businesses and investors. And of course, all politics to an extent is relevant to business and investors. So if it's important, we're going to cover it. But really, just in June, no surprise, a lot going on down here in Colombia. The central bank held rates steady. I think that Gustavo Petro tried to take credit for that on Twitter, and then a formal central banker came out and told him that that's very disingenuous, which it is, because the central bank has independence and does not operate at the direction of the presidency, fortunately, in Colombia, unlike some places where that's a problem. So here's a short episode. Thank you guys for your time. Next week, we not only do we have a holiday tomorrow in Colombia, July 3rd, but also July 4th is a holiday back in my home of the United States. So unless there is some important breaking news or something that we need to jump on and cover, it's also a travel week for me. We may play hooky and skip an episode. If so, I ask for your forgiveness in advance. And again, thank you for tuning in to Colombia Business News Recap. Be sure to subscribe to Finance Colombia, which is simply financecolombia.com with an never with a U. You can also go to simply fcsubscribe.com. And also remember, for the best bilingual talent, whether that's, let's say, in North America looking for people who speak Spanish, or people in Latin America, employers in Latin America looking for talent that can speak English, simply use Empleo Bilingüe, empleobilingüe.com. That's EmpleoBilingue.com. And we'll see you soon. Thank you, and stay safe.